Now that you've found UBN Radio and discovered our quality talk shows, it's time to spread the word to friends, family, and the universe. 24 hours of music and talk. Radio without limits. That's why people keep coming back for more. That's ubnradio.com.
Greetings and salutations, everyone. You have tuned into Dr. Judy, WTF, and I'm your host, Walt Lusk, with Dr. Judy Rosenberg in the house as well. We are next week celebrating our 3rd year being on air, and we really appreciate every single one of you that's watched, liked, and written in. Today we have a show by one of our fans. We're going to be talking about covert narcissism. Some of them are called the stealth narcissist or the wolf in sheep's clothing narcissist. So sometimes we are narcissistic about narcissism, and today is no excuse and no exception. You can catch us on iTunes. We're, of course, part of the iHeart family and here at UBN Radio Network. And, of course, all our shows now are on YouTube. So, Dr. Judy, how's it going?
Well, I'm just so excited. It's 3 years. I can't even believe.
It's been a quick 3 years.
Thank you, Walt. You've been a great partner.
Well, thank you.
And we have a great audience, and it's only growing. And we're reaching out to a lot of people across the nation and also worldwide. I'm getting letters.
Yes, we
requests.
are worldwide.
Yes. So, yeah, it's been quite a great 3 years, and lots of topics. And, of course, everyone can Google us and download from YouTube. Plenty of episodes. I think we have 100 and some odd.
Oh,
plus
about 140.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the night's episode was actually by a request from a fan a little while ago, and we're finally getting around to it. So, yes, we read everything that comes in, whether it's a song you want us to shrink, which we're going to do a great song by Alanis Morissette later, and dive into this topic. It's a really juicy one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and please do call in. We love call-ins.
We are a call-in show, and if you want to get on the couch with Dr. Judy with your emotional ouch, we're at area code 323-843-2826, and we'll definitely put you on. We had a call-in last week, and it was obviously a pastor talking about, when is it time to leave a relationship or leave a marriage? So check that one out.
Well, how about if you're with a covert narcissist? I think it's time.
Well, yeah, with a covert narcissist, as you'll learn, it's always time to get out. The question is, are you able to get out?
Or they'll get out for you. Most of the time they will, because they're just there for...
Yeah. Once they're done with you, they will literally throw you out like an old, useless rag. Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely. They will.
And I'm sure that all of you out there have had experience with people who are big fans of the throwaway society and big fans of
The throwaway society.
The throwaway society, and I'm sure many of you have felt used and abused, and the covert narcissist just takes it to a whole new level because they are stealthy. And you don't know exactly what their agenda is, but, we did a lot of research on the topic. I've definitely had people come in because they have suffered at the hands of a covert narcissist. And, I did my own kind of thinking about my own life, and I can definitely share with you, and I will as the show progresses, how I got caught up with a covert narcissist. The overt ones are easy to spot.
They're very easy to spot.
Okay,
they're very grandiose, and they're rarely out there. But covert narcissists are the shy narcissists, but no less dangerous and painful to become involved with. The covert narcissist personality is like the overt narcissist personality has deep feelings of unworthiness and shame, but the covert narcissist, however, lacks the manufactured confidence to present a grandiose false sense of self to the world. So he retreats to his inner world and lives out in his pathological fantasies.
Yeah, they're usually very quiet people.
Yeah, and sometimes they're oftenly passive aggressive.
Very, but they're often known as really nice guys, really, or nice women. They're really, really nice. They're pleasant to be with. They seem altruistic. They're a pillar in their community, oftentimes. But wait till you get to know them a little bit deeper.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Another one here is a covert narcissist will always play the victim. Regardless of whether anything is wrong or has been done to them, they would appear to have been wronged. They would portray their lives as unfortunate or less fortunate. They would want sympathy from others, and they will want to be the center of attention. Not because they deserve it, but because they want it and need it. They will secretly connive to do everything that is possible to get everyone's attention, but all those efforts would not be grandiose as common as the overt narcissist. So they're very stealthy, as I said, and in wolves in sheep's clothing.
So they're not the kinds of narcissists that you're used to, the ones driving flashy cars and playing important roles in society and getting a lot of plastic surgery and so on and so forth. That would be more the overt narcissist type. But I do want to lay down foundationally how narcissism occurs, and I want to lay it down via my mind map, which is a system I created to heal human disconnect and global disconnect, actually, which we'll be getting into
we're going to be doing
more and more.
Yep,
and as we speak, I want to let you know, Walt and everyone else, that I'm putting up my website called Healing Global Disconnect. It's going up slowly. I want a lot of participation in it because we have a global problem now.
Huge. You
don't need to really go too far to see what's happening in the world, and we are having a lot of chaos, breakdowns, and what I call clash of the isms. All our isms are coming to the head. White, black, all of our religions, they're just kind of...
They're way out there.
They're destroying each other.
Totally. I mean, we
right.
talk about Black Lives Matter. Some are calling it Black Lives Murder. And ultimately, all lives matter.
Well, this particular system was designed to create a united humanity,
Yes.
to bring together people so that we can share our light, whether we're Jews, Christians, Muslims, black, white, Chinese, Hindu. It doesn't really matter. It's just that when one ism crosses the line and tries to destroy another ism, we have a problem. Okay, so we need to respect each other's isms, and we need to find a way, as long as they're not trying to murder us, to come together as a united humanity, or else we're all going to perish. There's just no question about it. So the website is going up. It's called healinghumandisconnect.com. I'm going to double check on that, and we're working on it, and it'll just
Healing Human Disconnect or global?
Thank you. I'm so used to saying Healing Human Disconnect. healingglobalDisconnect.com.
There you go.
And it's going up, and very excited about it. And then I'm hoping that all of you will jump on board and blog and comment and find ways where we can become more humane, and we can join the human race and join the humane race and create something that actually is synergistic.
I agree, because
scale.
Dr. Judy and I talked a lot about the fact that Judy and I feel that we, as an individual, as couples, as lovers, as employees, as families, are more disconnected than ever. A lot of it has to do with the cell phone, but I think today it's intentional and we're being played.
And it all starts with mother-infant disconnect, father-infant disconnect. And if you'd be so kind as to put the mind map up, I can explain a little better.
And those of you listening, you can actually go to drjudywtf.com and see it.
Yes, and we also have an app, and you can download it.
Yes, the Psychological Healing Center app on iPhone.
Yeah.
So there it is.
Okay, thank you. So the top third of the mind map represents our past. The middle third represents the chaos of the now, and the bottom third represents the morph out of our pain, whether it be on an individual or a global basis, because really the mind map is both a macro and a micro process. And it starts on a micro level, which is why I chose to switch gears many years ago, and instead of focusing on healing global disconnect, I decided to start with healing human disconnect, because on a one-on-one level, if we're not doing well, then what is within gets projected out. And so there's no way that we could be healthy as a human race if we're not healthy individually. So if you look at the mind maps, top third row, what you will see is panels 1, 2, and 3. And panel 1 represents the wounds of childhood, and it represents wounds that that pertain to physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, neglect, and smothering, a very well overlooked.
And this is how a narcissist is developed.
Right, and the narcissist is developed by either being smothered and spoiled or not being given enough narcissistic supplies. And going back to Bowlby and attachment theory, the narcissistic supplies that are necessary to form a human psyche, and there's more and more research to substantiate this, is that breastfeeding is a huge part of helping the human race form a healthy human psyche, because when the baby is breastfed, not only is the baby receiving antibodies and nutrients,
the best nourishment
possible, but that baby is also receiving eye contact and skin contact and feeling the presence of the mother and hearing the heartbeat, and it's nature's way of bonding mother to baby.
Absolutely.
Nature's way of helping that infant child establish secure attachment, nature's way of helping that infant learn the mechanisms of soothing him or herself, because everything flows from the outside in. So it's mother to baby, and then the trickle down is from father nourishing mother and trickling down to baby, and a healthy system is where everything flows well. So,
and the father is nurturing the nurturer.
Thank you, Walt. Mm-hmm. And so, as we like to say, childhood is a
hostage situation.
It sure is.
A Judaism.
Yes, thank you. And not only that, but I think I've heard that expression before. Prisoners of childhood. Alice Miller. I'll attribute that one to her. And same concept that we don't have control over who our parents are, and we don't have control over how they treat us. As a matter of fact, this thing is so multi-generational that the wounds of childhood are ingrained in our parents, which were ingrained in their parents, and so on and so forth. And Dr. Murray Bowen talks about the multi-generational transmission process, which is the trickle down. And if we don't morph, if we don't shift, then what we're going to just keep breaking down. So going back to panel 1, the main injury of a narcissist is that person didn't get enough of those supplies, didn't get the eye contact or the skin contact or the proper nurturing, or maybe that person was smothered to the point where they were being used to shore up the feelings of the mother, because smothering is not about love. Smothering is about the mother needing something from that baby, whether she's needing that child to be her little dolly, or she needs to control that child because of her own anxiety, or she needs to pull that child closer to her because her marriage isn't really good, or she has nobody to really lean on, and then she sponges off of that child. And so what happens is that the child is so injured that they've run out. They've not received the narcissistic supply. So guess what they're going to do?
They create an environment all their own to make sure that they never, ever, ever get that supply, not get that supply ever again in their entire life.
Right, exactly. And so the dynamics that make up for it could be really anything. It's sort of like, it could be a depressed mother who doesn't really have the focus necessary. It could be a grieving mother who's lost an infant and now is using the child to calm herself down. But it's not just that. A lot of factors go into creating this narcissistic injury. But as I say in my book, Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect, our wounds, our symptoms are hieroglyphics. They are actually indicators that we've been injured at cause. If we're suffering from symptoms, something caused that.
Some have called the covert narcissist an emotional parasite, which I thought was a really loaded phrase. Again, just to elaborate a little bit, they seem much more benign even after they've reeled you in as their source of supply, as we've just talked about. They don't necessarily drop the nice act. That's why they're so dangerous, because it's hard to put your finger on what these dolls are actually doing. Mm-hmm. You might think there's something wrong with you for feeling weary or nervous around such a, quote, nice person, but they're true wolves in sheep's clothing. The red flags are much harder to see in covert narcissists, but make no mistake, they are predators too. And we got some examples. The compassionate and friendly nurse who accidentally kills her patients. The needy friend, yeah, the needy friend who gives you unasked for gifts or does unasked favors, then complains that you are actually selfishly if you do not want to spend time or doing something besides being with them. The spouse who plays martyr, who puts everyone on a guilt trip because of everything they've done for you. And how about the friend who seems to have a never-ending litany of problems, but when you try to help them, they never take your advice and they give you a long list of reasons of why your advice really will never work. The friend is an emotional parasite and will make you feel drained. And we talk about vampirism. And last one, the parasitic spouse who won't get a job, doesn't appear to be trying. They keep giving you, quote, reasonable excuses as to why they can't find one.
Reasonable.
Reasonable.
Very
It's always
reasonable.
reasonable. It's always reasonable. So some of the red flags, and you can dive in here, there are a few. Emptiness. They seem to have something missing that you just can't quite put your finger on.
And I want to elaborate on this because it really does bring up my own memories. And, I too am human. I did get caught up with a covert narcissist. I've also been caught up with overt narcissists. I just seem to gravitate. And, like I say to everyone here, we have our negative core beliefs so that as we get in touch with negative core beliefs, we can know what we're attracting, right? So that if our core belief is that we're not enough or we're not good enough or that we will only be loved if we do for other people, then we're really, really prone to be victims to narcissists who want to take, because we just want to give, right? But there's a thing called bleeding out. Panel 7, if you don't mind putting that up, which is my paradigm shift. I call it the interconnection panel, where people are supposed to come together as a united couple or united whatever, friend, but it doesn't really work that way with a covert narcissist or an overt narcissist, because you pair up with that person and you're literally emotionally bleeding out. You feel more tired, feel more drained.
Vampirism.
And at the end of the day, when you do your emotional calculations, it's, even monetarily, I'm reminded by how much money I've given people.
I think we've all been there.
Fixed people's teeth, because I'm a really big fan of nice teeth, lend people money, so on and so forth. And, unfortunately, you don't give back because that person's whose, quote, teeth you're fixing or buying new clothes for is actually looking for their next prey.
Yep, sure are.
You're their money bag so that they can self-improve and go up the ladder of whatever.
And the moment you're empty, no matter how that's defined, they're tossing you out like a used rag and moving on to the next one.
Absolutely.
They're also stubborn. They rarely apologize unless they want something from you. Mm-hmm. They have ability to make you feel guilty even when something is not even your fault, which makes us go crazy, right?
Right. So I just want to put a little pause there and say that it takes two to tango, okay? So that
the yin and the yang.
You know, that I could say, oh, I was attracted to all these covert, overt narcissists, so on, but there must be something within me, right? And I'm using myself as an example of us. There's something within us that is a puzzle that attracts that piece of the other puzzle that then takes a really wonderful, not so wonderful ride into chaos, defenses, and breakdowns. And that's why it's so important to do the psychological work and dismantle our negative core beliefs such as we're not good enough, or we're not lovable, or we're not this or that, or there's just lists and lists of core beliefs that people literally buy into. And at the Psychological Healing Center, we work really hard. I mean, me and my team work really hard on identifying the wounds of childhood and dismantling them so that people are not caught in that fishnet, so to speak, of pathology, and they don't get pulled down under the undertow and go for that long ride, which I call the WTF, what the Freud, because it's repetitive.
It very much is.
Yeah.
Covert narcissists are entirely self-centered. They're a narcissist. They are the center of their own universe.
Right.
They're expert liars. They're very charming, hypnotic, and the master of manipulation, which is why a lot of us fall prey of it, because they have made their life's work to do this. They'll size you up, and then they'll start put their game on you. Mm-hmm. They project their insecurities and deflect it upon you. They're very sensitive to even constructive criticism. They have an inability to form intimate relationships. They go from relationship to relationship.
They're so, that was, I think, where I started getting a little suspicious that something was up because of the shallow quality. Mm-hmm. I can remember times when I would sit there and the person literally had a blank look in their eyes. It's just, like the lights are on, but nobody's home. And they don't really want to engage with you unless there's something in it for them.
Absolutely.
So if you start telling them about a dream that you had the other night, then they'll just say, that's nice.
Yeah. Or my favorite phrase is, well, that's a thought.
That's a thought. And so you're pitching these pearls of wisdom or your emotions into the air, and they're just not catching it. They're just dropping the ball.
Because they have an inability to feel genuine remorse.
Right.
I mean, they do everything for them, and it's all about them, and why should they feel any guilt? I mean, it's about them.
Right.
They blame others for their own problems. Again, they're not going to take responsibility for anything.
Of course not.
They have low emotional intelligence.
And sometimes very high IQ.
Yes, a lot of them are very, very high IQ. Yes.
Right, and you can find them a lot of times you'll find them in jobs where the computers are involved.
Well,
some kind of technical job, because they get to be sitting behind the screen or behind the scene, and they're not the overt narcissist who likes to be, up and about and in front and looking good and in sales and, Hollywood and so on. That's more the overt narcissistic type, but the covert ones are kind of like the behind the scenes ones.
And we got a few more. They are highly materialistic. That's what narcissists are, right? They got to have the cleanest, best, most grandiose car, right? They lack empathy. We've already talked about this, but they are there's no empathetic bone in their body. They're just not empathetic at all.
They're empathetic to themselves.
Themselves. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. To themselves.
And they also come off as being really, really kind. Like they're charitable. Charming. They're good people. They give to the homeless and so on and so forth. But they don't connect.
And last, a really big one here is the victim mentality. And this is from an individual who was fell victim of it. These are the do-gooders, the altruists, the first person to volunteer for the church fundraising drive, the mother who volunteers for the classroom mother, the favor-doing friend. If you fail to, quote, appreciate their good deeds to their satisfaction or live up to their unrealistically high expectations, watch out when they work behind the scenes to ruin your relationship through gossip, lies, and triangulation. In other words, if they don't, you don't give them what they want, they're done with you, and they're going to make sure that you're finished. They're martyrs and are selfishly and evil for not sacrificing yourself the way they have it for you. So they're very, very vindictive.
I wanted to present a case, actually. I was
Okay.
working with a young woman. I asked her permission. Of course, I won't use her name, but I just wanted to share a little bit about the dynamics. In my book, Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect, and in my mind map system, I use the phrase, the double dungeon of darkness. And that is how narcissistic injuries are formed. You turn to mommy dearest, and she's not there for you. And you turn to daddy dearest, and he's not there for you either. And so I wanted to describe a very subtle form of narcissistic injury and how the parents of this young lady were really putting a huge burden, guilt trip on her. And in this case, the mother was calling her incessantly and demanding time of her and guilting her into not calling her back immediately, or going to the movies with her and spending all weekend with her. And this young lady works and she needs to progress her life. So what we discovered in the course of the therapy is that not only was the mother injurious to her well-being, which was more the overt narcissist, but the father was injurious to her well-being as well.
Double whammy.
Because the father supported the mother and would throw her under the bus and say, he backed up mom, and he would just say, be sweet to her, honey. Just be sweet to her. And that's the only thing he could say. And she would ask him, could you just please support me and ask mom not to call me as often and ask mom not to be so demanding of my time and energy. And he didn't want any trouble in his home, and he wanted the daughter to make mom happy so that he can come home to a sweet wife. And so there was no depth to this father. There was no empathy about him, and he couldn't connect to his daughter at all because he had an agenda.
Right, it was all about him and what he wanted.
Right. His agenda was to come home to a sweet wife. And so if the daughter wouldn't comply with softening down his wife and giving her that nice day so that he can come home and see his happy wife, then he wasn't going to be a party to supporting her at all. And so what happens in these cases is that you've got to set boundaries with these people, and they're not going to like it.
No, and that's
not at all.
Just to hit this home, just to interrupt you really quick, that really is sort of leaving and just walking away and running away.
Yeah.
But if that you can't do it yet, the only way left to deal with it, and I really is trying to find, okay, how do you deal with these guys? Boundaries is the only way.
Right. And you know, in her case, I'm psychoeducating her into doing what she feels is her minimum requirement to be a decent daughter to her parents. And that means calling them occasionally and celebrating birthdays and holidays and, you know, honoring her parents. And then just knowing that if her parents push her way beyond that point, that's just going to have to be her internal work of saying, that's not my responsibility. She came to see me because of listening to the shows on narcissism.
Great.
And as a matter of fact, I don't think she thought herself how serious this was until she started feeling depressed and anxious and guilty and overburdened, and she
all this stuff their parents threw on her.
She just didn't understand, you know, because she's coming from a beautiful family and thinking, you know, how can I have the right to complain about my life? I live in a beautiful world, and my family has money, and we take beautiful vacations. So how can I be such a bitch as to complain that my life isn't going well? That's how subtle it is.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. And sometimes it's like, you know, you want to cook a frog, put it in cold water, and by the time the frog realizes the water's too hot, it's too late. So I wanted to talk about a little bit. Let's see, some myths, kind of comparing overt versus covert, about narcissists. So you're told that narcissists are always brash, loud, assertive, flashy, and confident, and that, of course, is the overt narcissist. Well, the problem is coverts are quiet, insecure, and passive. You know, you're told that narcissists will never apologize for things they do. Well, the problem is coverts can learn that a quick and total apology is a really slick way of getting their target to, quote, go back to sleep if it looks like they are waking up. They figure out you're onto their game. They're going to kind of
do.
tone you down.
Absolutely, and they'll also tell you that they're going to comply. Honey, can you do blah, blah, blah for me? Of course, whatever your wish is my command.
But they have absolutely no intention whatsoever of following through on that at all.
No.
They do not. You're told that narcissists are ambitious, successful go-getters, full of energy, and pumped up with charismatic charm. Mm-hmm. The problem is coverts are masked by failed ambition, chronic feelings of emptiness, fragility, low functioning, and when depleted can frequently sink into outright depression.
And frequently they will target people who have good narcissistic supplies. So target people who have beauty or charm or money or high qualities so that they can have a nice basket full of goodies for themselves.
That's absolutely right.
Like a leech, like a nice leech.
Right. Absolutely, vampire. Lastly, you're told a narcissist can be detached because they will always tell you how amazing they are and by bragging about their accomplishments. The problem is coverts are known for presenting themselves as victims, as we said, vulnerable victims, who can even use their vulnerability as a hook to bait you in.
Right.
And by the way, you're listening to Dr. Judy WTF for What the Freud. We're talking about covert narcissists here at UBN Radio Network. It's a call-in show, so if you want to get on the couch about your narcissistic experience, and I know there's at least a couple of you folks out there that have, you can call us at area code 323-843-2826, or of course you can write us at info@drjudywtf.com, and we take every idea for a show or song to shrink.
And what's so interesting is that even very seasoned therapists may not catch this diagnosis because overt narcissists hardly go to therapy. Covert narcissists will sometimes go to therapy, and they'll really act like they're the nice guy.
Well, I agree with you. Here you go. Covert narcissists are dangerous. You will never see them coming. They will flaunt their vulnerability in front of you to capitalize on your compassion, right? Because therapists are compassionate folks. They will flatter and charm you with their shyness to get close enough to you so they can get their fangs into you. All the flattery of the initial meeting is a phase with which they are sizing you up.
And buttering you
up to fry you, quite possibly full of brim and boiling envy and narcissistic rage that you have something that they, quote, deserve to be given, the purpose of which is to learn your weakness and vulnerability so they can drain you dry.
And they're very shame-based as well.
Yes.
So their low self-esteem and their shame drives them to act as victims, and also to get people to make them feel better about themselves. So by latching on to people who are higher up the scale on whatever level, beauty, fame, so on, they get to feel like they're a somebody, which deep within, they're not feeling like much of a somebody at all.
Their narcissism on steroids is the last part. Overt narcissists are a walk in the park compared to the coverts, and they genuinely are the nastier breed, coverts are. There's research that indicates that coverts, usually referred to as vulnerable or stealth narcissists in the academic world, are more likely than overt to engage in domestic violence in early phases of the relationship and abuse children. So it's just they're a disaster, and unfortunately, due to their charm and their cunningness and vulnerability and sucking people in, many times people get involved and then they realize it's too late.
Right. Well, one other thing I wanted to mention is that not all, and again, this is all on a continuum. So when we talk like this, we're making broad general statements, of course, and not everyone fits into neat little packages. But in general, a covert narcissist is so covert that they may even be living with you or married to you and be dating other people and planning on marrying their next person. Yeah, I laugh now.
They're very serial in their dating.
They're very serial, and so they will not, even though they claim that they're very independent people and they hate dependency, they themselves cannot seem to be alone. They need a relationship.
They do, and they're never satisfied takers, and their stance becomes the perfect magnet for unknowing giver personality. So we're going to go a few of these. One, they have a false humility, okay? Again, I don't know if a regular narcissist, an overt narcissist is humble, but the covert ones are. They have a form of pride in this self-deprecating way. They play the victim and put themselves down so that they bait you into complimenting them. Their goal is to let you know that they are important and seek high status positions, yet they disguise themselves in humility, and they are really stoked for their efforts. So they really are trying to bait you to, stoke their quote insecure ego.
And just remember, these people are at the effect of injuries. Okay, so
very,
even
very
though
injured.
we look at them and go, "Yuck, this is disgusting! What a terrible human being," we've got to remember that mental health and ethics are related. So the more mentally healthy we are, the more ethical we are. And when we're injured, we bend those rules because we need to shore up our own egos. So they're stealthy in that they may have these covert lives that you don't even know about. People who, find out years later that they have another wife or they have another family, for example.
I had a lady friend who that happened with.
Or another husband.
She divorced him.
Right.
And then was moving out and found these whole pictures of another family she had no clue or concept of.
Absolutely, right.
Yeah, traveled a lot and she never knew where he went. We've talked about this, but we're going to expand on it a little bit. They lack empathy. They will ignore any valid concern that you have. They choose to follow their own agenda, and in every circumstance, because they are, of course, very selfish. They don't want to learn compassion. They want to stay isolated and withdrawn. There's no meeting halfway. The only way is their way.
Oh, and they'll say that they have no agenda.
Oh, absolutely not.
And they hate agendas,
right.
because they hate commitments. So if you say, well, I have an agenda, I only want to be in a serious relationship that leads to marriage, monogamous, don't put your agenda on me.
Their goal is to be served, not to serve. I thought that was pretty potent. They have immature responses. In other words, they take offense to very simple criticisms, as we've known. They attempt to cover their anger by pretending things don't bother them, yet their nonverbal body language, and again, this is where you have to have a little bit of a connect or disconnection, shows anger even though they don't admit it. They become passive-aggressive in their responses, and they will not follow through with their actions.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
Simplifications of other needs. Again, they don't really care about your needs. They don't give a rip about what you want. It's all about them. Minimize the needs of people around them. Only their limited scope of what is important to them, so that to invest their time, energy in anything contrary to their own personal agenda.
But they will put a little bit of minimal effort into the situation so that you keep plodding along with them.
And hope that maybe
there's more to them than what you're seeing, and you hope that by communicating with them, they're going to get it and wake up, but they don't.
No.
They don't, and they'll go on to their next person because their next person doesn't get it, or their next person works for them rather than with them.
Definitely works for them.
Works for them.
It's all about them.
Right.
They are unable to listen. Okay, they shoot from the hip with quick advice and not ask questions during conversations, but instead they shut down any dialogue so they can minimize that. In other words, they don't really care to listen to you because they've already know what they want, know how to do it, and they know what they're doing.
Right,
and again,
unless you're saying something that pertains to their agenda, then why listen? Why put the energy in?
Correct. They're not going to put energy in anything that doesn't benefit them. And if they find out that you've benefited them for a period of time, and they find that benefit's diminishing, then they're going to find ways to destroy you and get you out of their life so they can move on to the next victim. Right? Of course, they're smug and have a sense of superiority. They're very self-assured. Passive aggressive. Here we go. Some introverted narcissists deal with disagreeable people or circumstances in passive aggressive ways. Upon receiving a reasonable request from you, they might say, "Okay, yes, of course, as you wish," as you say, and then they will either do nothing or behave as they please. In other words, they shrug it off with an excuse or say nonchalantly that it's better this way. In other words, they're just going to discount it and dismiss it, and they don't care. They're just trying to shine you on. And they're, of course, very sensitive. As I've said, one of the questions to ask a narcissist to do a narcissist test is you look at them and go, "Have you gained some weight?" If they really fly off the handle, you might be dealing with a narcissist.
Well, probably the covert type.
No,
not the covert, the overt type.
type.
And the covert type would just sort of let that fly by them, and then they'll drop you and tell you that your body is not what they wanted all these years anyways. They'll wait, they'll make the soup. They'll concoct. They're just a little bit more passive aggressive and aggressive at the end of the day.
I like this one. They are misunderstood special people. The perceptions of some introverted narcissists include notions of "I'm special, I'm one of a kind, I'm ahead of my time, I'm so unique, no one understands me, I'm smart, and I'm above everybody else." But by contracting this superficial belief, the introverted or covert narcissist creates a reassuring role, submerging the fearful and vulnerable true self. Because it's all a facade.
I remember... I think this one might have been a covert narcissist, but it's always interesting to see how they dialogue. What kind of work do you do? Well, I work in the industry. It doesn't matter what they do. They could be sitting and but not that necessarily diagnoses somebody as a covert or overt narcissist, but sometimes you have to pay attention to the words of the people and the flavor of the words to see what impact it's having on you. And if you're feeling that the power of their words are demeaning or devaluing or destroying or making you feel less than, or there's a sense that they're disconnecting from you because they're dissing you in the conversation, then you want to be having your antennas up and red flagging. And further looking into this.
But again, they're going to play the victim, and you want to help them out. In terms of the covert ones, and the overt ones are a little more obvious. They're all about them. But by the time you fall victim of their cunning and their manipulation ways, sometimes you're in the relationship. It's like, oh my gosh, now what do I do?
Right, and if you're a psychologist, you try to cure them.
You try to cure them. How's that worked out for you?
Until you discover that it's not your job.
No, it's not. It's quite a job. We've talked about this, and this is a phrase that I've never really delved into before, but and you've mentioned it in the show, narcissistic supply. Right? It's all about narcissistic supply. They see people as objects. If you can make them successful, if you can make them enter a certain group of people, if you blindly and naively love them, if you have anything that can be useful to them emotionally, socially, or financially in the present or the future, then you qualify as being one of their sources of supply.
Absolutely.
But the other side of the coin, and they can go on for a long time, but until you're not useful to them anymore, you challenge them about who they truly are.
Oh, they don't
Worse
like
still,
that.
you expose them to the world.
No.
Absolutely
No.
not. At this point, they will discard you, and without remorse or regret, as if you never, ever existed.
Right. So for those of you who've experienced this horrific disposable experience, understand that the best thing that you could do is recognize the signs and get out early. Do not bond with people like this. And if it's too late, then get out anyway and work on yourself and work on your own negative core beliefs and your own wounds of childhood so that you don't get involved in these dynamics in order to use the person to heal through your own wounds, because that's what we do. that person's wounds plus the other person's wounds get together and replay into what I call the WTF. And it doesn't go well because it ends up in chaos, defenses, and breakdowns as opposed to healing. It doesn't heal.
No, it can't. And this is, again, another passive-aggressive thing here, and we're going to have to do our song pretty quick. Covert narcissists always seem to admire people who are as successful as they would like to be, but at the same time, they envy and hate those people for being successful.
Absolutely.
They claim that they want you to succeed,
no, they
but
don't.
when you do, they envy you and hate you for succeeding.
And worse, they may even put down aspects of your growth so that you don't grow. So if you want to make sure that you don't grow, then these are the kinds of people that will ensure that you don't grow. And who doesn't want to grow? So they'll thwart your growth.
Again, you just can't put your finger on it, but it's right there. And,
Right.
Okay, don't play the mind games or seek revenge with a narcissist because they will always win. That's all they know about. It's always about them, and it's always about winning. If you lose big time, that makes their day. You can't match their cruelty either. It's just that's what they do. Set boundaries, and don't tell them too much about yourself so they can't use it against you.
Good
So
idea.
again, boundaries are about sort of walking away. The only way to get around it is no contest at all is the best way to deal with narcissists.
Yeah,
but
no
if you
contact,
have
right.
contact,
Right.
excuse me. But the point is, if you have to stay, the best way is to set boundaries. They call you at 3 o'clock in the morning. They want something. You know what? Don't call me between 11 o'clock at night, 7 in the morning. I'm busy. Bye. Just set boundaries. They'll stomp, they'll moan, they'll groan. But if you are still providing something they want, they'll get over it, and life will go on.
Right, and they don't bond anyway,
No,
so
no.
they'll move on.
Right.
Right.
So now we're going to do a song called Narcissists, Narcissus, by Alanis Morissette, and it's by request. And I'm going to read the lyrics, and then we're going to close out playing the song. It's a little lengthy. Dear Mama's boy, I know you've had your butt licked by your mother. I know you've enjoyed all that attention from her, and every woman graced you with your presence after. Dear narcissist boy, I know you've never really apologized for anything. I know you've never really taken responsibility. I know you've never really listened to a woman.
Well, there is the smothering part,
Yeah.
licked the butt by his mother or her mother, and I know you've enjoyed all that attention, so they've been praised, over attended to, and they've been spoiled because everybody just thinks that they're really, really special. And there's no sense of responsibility. There's no connection. They've never really bothered to hear how they impact another human being because that just doesn't relate to them, doesn't concern them.
Dear my show boy, I know you're not really into conflict resolution or seeing both sides of every equation or having an uninterrupted conversation. And any talk of healthiness, any talk of connectiveness, any talk of resolving this leaves you running for the door. Why do I try and love you? Try and love you when you really don't want me to.
Well, they run for the door when there's any threat of intimacy.
Absolutely.
And the real fear of a narcissist is that they're found out. The covert narcissist doesn't want to be found out. And actually, here's a statement I heard from a covert narcissist. One quote is that, when I get really involved with you, I feel that I'm going to lose myself in you. So rather than get lost within the person and lose their identity, they would rather just choose to not get that deep.
Right.
Okay.
Dear egotist boy, you've never really had to suffer any consequence. You've never stayed with anyone longer than 10 minutes. You've never understand anyone showing resistance. Dear popular boy, I know you're used to getting everything so easily, a stranger to the concept of reciprocity. People honor boys like you in this society. Any talk of selfishness, any talk of selflessness, excuse me, any talk of working at this, any talk of being of service leaves you running for the door.
Well, they don't really want to work on it. Reciprocity, that would be more like interconnection, panel 7. They don't want to give back. They just want to take. So why work on it? If it's not working, just leave. That's their philosophy.
Well, my line to that is grow by leaving.
Grow by leaving.
Grow by leaving.
Right.
You go back to the woman who will dance the dance. You go back to your friends who will lick your ass. You go back to ignoring all the rest of us. You go back to the center of your universe.
And this is really important because this is where the healing comes in. If you've ever been through this kind of relationship and you've been dropped or, kind of pushed under the bus or disregarded, understand that it's not personal to you. They're just looking for somebody who will blow smoke up their important butt. And if you don't do it, then they're going to find, that
another smoker.
Another smoker, lower hanging fruit that just thinks that they're God. And right. There's always going to be somebody like that.
Dear self-centered boy, I don't know why I still feel affected by you. I never lasted very long with someone like you. I never did, although I have to admit I wanted to. Dear magnetic boy, you've never been with anyone who doesn't take your shit. You've never been with anyone who's dared to call you on it, and I wonder how you'd be if someone were to call you on it.
Which would probably be the healthier relationship they'd want to be in, but they wouldn't be able to stand it.
No,
so they'd want
leave.
somebody who just doesn't get it.
Yeah.
So here's where, again, we have to do the work, because if we're affected by them, that means that we have our own negative core belief. We have our own negative self-esteem that we're still not complete with. So we're still trying to fish our egos out of the situation by going back into it again, and we're affected by it because we're not healed. We're not healed.
And any talk of willingness and any talk of both feet in and any talk of commitment leaves you running for the door. Why do I try and change you when you really don't want me to? And then lastly, you go back to the woman who will dance the dance. You'll go back to your friends who will lick your ass.
Right.
You go back to being so oblivious. You go back to the center of your universe.
And they need to be the center of the universe, and they can't share that stage. And if you're an important person also and you have a sense of self, boy, you're out, because they're not going to shine next to you. Oh, my God. And the shame and the low self-esteem and that terrible, horrible feeling is going to come back up. So they're better off being that center of the universe, where they're the shiny object to somebody.
That's right. And again, it all boils down to the fact it's always, always, always about them.
Right.
Never fails. That's what it starts in, begins in, and ends with. And that's our show, folks. You've listened to Dr. Judy WTF. We've been talking about covert narcissism. And if you have a request for a song for us to shrink or a show, since we've been doing this for 3 years, I'm still amazed that we've come up with some ideas that we haven't even talked about.
I know. I think, what are we going to talk about next
what are we
week?
doing
Oh, my
next
God,
week?
What if we run out of ideas?
And
that hasn't
next
happened
week,
yet.
we're going to have a very, very, very special guest calling in. It's a gentleman by the name of Vincent Jenna. He is a psychic, an intuitive, and a licensed clinical social worker out of North Carolina. An amazing, amazing guy. Known him for a couple of years, been a couple to his seminars and workshops. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be an amazing, amazing show. And this one, we're going to close out with our show, with Alanis Morissette, Narcissist. And until next time, folks, you stay tuned and take care.